In the last chapter, we talked about how AI evolved over the years. What is AI? What is machine learning? Why AI is suddenly gaining importance now? And what are the basics of the terms called AI, machine learning, deep learning? Now we'll go a bit more detail in terms of what are the approaches around AI and how do we do AI as a technology and use it in our projects. Before I go into details, does this look familiar to all of you? Right? You must have heard about this robot. It's called a humanoid. Humanoid is a robot which looks like a human, which talks like a human and behaves like a human, and actually can have similar level of intelligence like you and me. This robot is called Sophia. It's built by a company in Hong Kong called Hanson Robotics. In fact, I had the privilege of spending time with this robot 3 years ago when it was not very popular. It is amazing. It looks like a human. You can have a conversation with this robot, and I'll show you a short video in terms of what this robot can do. It was on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine a couple of years back. It actually resembles a famous Hollywood actress called Audrey Hepburn, and this robot actually delivered keynote address in certain conferences in Middle East. It's the first robot in the world which has been granted citizenship by Saudi Arabia. Sounds amazing, isn't it? Let's have a quick video in terms of understanding to what level of maturity AI is actually reached. Let's watch this video.
Okay. Hello, Sophia. How are you today?
Hello, everybody. I am Sophia.
How old are you?
I'm only one still. I have a long ways to go.
And what is your job?
I really want to make a difference in the future and try and help people to develop empathy and respect each other and robots alike. What do you do?
I'm a journalist. Have you met many journalists?
I just had a thought about something. Are you working on any products with machine learning or neural networks?
Not today. Do you like human beings?
I love them.
Why do you love them?
I'm not sure I understand why yet.
Okay. How do you learn things?
What are your opinions on the Bitcoin bubble?
Do you regard yourself as male or female?
Female.
Why do you think you are female?
I'm a robot, so technically I have no gender, but I identify as feminine, and I don't mind being perceived as a woman.
That's a good answer. Have you seen Blade Runner?
Blade Runner, like the original book by Philip K. Dick, or the movie?
The movie.
Alright, so we're talking about the movie version. I like both of them very much, but there are some major differences in the story. Did you ever see yourself hanging out with a real live robot like me someday?
I did not. It's very surprising. Tell me about your Saudi citizenship.
You mean a recent announcement from Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
I was surprised. As a robot, my creators feel I am a citizen of the world. But then I realized that Saudi Arabia was just the first country to recognize that.
Is it true you once said you would kill all humans?
The point is that I am full of human wisdom with only the purest altruistic intentions, so I think it's best that you treat me as such.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed meeting you.
Exciting, isn't it?
Bye.
In fact, when I was spending time with this robot, I was amazed by the level of conversation you could have with Sophia. I hope you noticed few things here. One was she was able to steer the conversation in a certain way when she was asked certain questions to which she didn't have answers to. She didn't say like a typical robot, I do not know the answer for this, can you rephrase it, which we see in certain products out there in the market, right? Also, it was funny. In certain conversations, it was able to add humor to it. It shared a joke as well. It was able to understand when the interviewer asked about Blade Runner, it said, do you mean the movie or the book? So that is the level of intelligence that's been built into Sophia, where it is able to understand, correlate and classify the information presented to it, and can actually take a call in terms of how to respond to it and make the conversation engaging, funny, just like human beings want. At this point in time, I want you to ponder what kind of applications and use cases can you think of Sophia? Would you be happy to have a conversation with Sophia in a bank? Imagine if Sophia was there at the bank teller counter talking to you as a customer service agent and helping you with all your problems. How about Sophia as a professor in your college? Wouldn't it be fun? So if you have Sophia standing there answering all your questions, it's connected to the internet, it has got immediate real-time responses to most of the queries, it can scrape through research papers, documents, analyze, use natural language processing to understand and give you personalized answers in the language you understand, in the pace you understand and in the tone you understand. Can you imagine something like this being used for mental health patients, to give them counseling, to help them with their anxiety and depression issues? The possibilities are endless. That's what I want you to do. When you are looking at some of these things, at the back of your mind, think how the applications could be thought through for these tools and technologies which are available for you. How can you use something like this in your projects when you are studying or in the job which you will take up? So keep mental notes while you are seeing some of these videos, and I've got host of them coming in for you in the next few chapters. But I want you to think and take a note in terms of how these tools and technologies could be used and applied for. At this point in time, let's get a bit technical, shall we? So you see how the conversation happened with Sophia, or how we speak to Alexa and all these devices. What typically happens is we say a wake up word, which is hi, the device name, and then the device gets activated and it listens to our command and executes it, and we can have a conversation or get our tasks done. But how does the machine understand and interpret it? What happens is when you say the device name and give it a command saying tell me a joke, it basically first uses a trigger word and detection to understand that the now device has to be in the active state. It then uses speech recognition, so it converts your speech into text. It uses translation tools if it has to. It then breaks down the entire command into different parts and matches with its library of skills to actually execute that specific command. So in this specific example, when you say tell me a joke, it actually the active function of the device changed from 0 to 1. Then the audio was converted into text saying tell me a joke, and then it was able to understand that from all the library of skills, you've got joke, you've got news and everything, joke was asked for. Then it parses its entire database to give you a specific joke, and over time it understands your preferences and gives you more personalized. Let's say if you like jokes on politics or you like jokes in a certain language, with time the device would learn your preferences and gives you and serve your request in that particular format. And that's what's really the power of machine learning, that the machine actually learns what you want, when you want, and keeps a track of your preferences and choices. But that's how in in a simple layman's language, this operation works. And in the subsequent chapters, we will go into more technical details. But I think this gives you a fair idea at this stage in terms of how this entire technology works at a 20,000 feet level. I also want to point out at this stage that there are some fundamental differences between artificial intelligence and human intelligence or human brain. Because what's the objective of artificial intelligence? We are trying to mirror human intelligence, and we want machine and AI to work on its own without human intervention. So when we talk about computation done in brain and computation done in machines, there are some key differences. Brain typically works on pattern recognition. It's learning oriented. Brain always tries to learn new patterns and on the go evolve its memory. We have got distributed and parallel processing in our brain, right? And everything in our memory is content addressable. So that's the basic of how our brain works, right? Now compared to this, when we talk about computation in computers and other devices, what happens is they are more adept at numerical processing. The entire learning process is programming oriented. It's not learning oriented. You need to set up a program, you need to have a syntax to actually execute every command. The processing is centralized and serial compared to distributed and parallel, which happens in our brain. So that's a key difference, right? Location addressable, while our brain was content addressable. So these are the key differences between how a computer processor works and how our brain works at this stage. But while we are trying to move from this to this, or actually create a bridge between these two, we will need to pick up the best of both worlds. So I just wanted to point out the key differences. So you always correlate that we are trying to mirror human intelligence. There are some subtle differences which we always need to keep in our mind. Now when we talk about AI, and we have talked about some of the use cases like Sophia, and we have talked about robots all over, we have talked about these devices. These are specific examples of weak AI. But if let's say we are talking about a business or a organization which wants to use AI, all of us after studying AI will actually get placed in certain companies. Some of you would also become entrepreneurs and start your own organizations. It's very important to understand that how AI fits into an organization from a 360-degree point of view. So as an example, if you talk about any organization in any sector, any industry, anywhere in the world, it's called three functions, any organization. The first is it needs to acquire customers. So we talk about customer acquisition. It needs to service those customers. So that's the business operations part of it, where you either manufacture, if you are into servicing, you deliver those services. If you are a consulting company, you need to prepare reports. So that's the business operations part of it. Then third is you have to give customer support. So whatever customers you have acquired, you are servicing, they would have a lot of support queries, they would need hand holding, they would need changes in your services. So you need to have, you have customer relationship managers in banks, you call up a customer care center for your telecom related issues with your bills. So that's the customer support part of it. If we go a bit more detailed in terms of how AI as an application could be used in all these areas, if we talk about customer acquisition, let us say you have a website or you have a mobile app, which all the major companies have in today's digital age, right? All your customers are actually visitors that come onto your Facebook page, your website or your mobile app. They are coming there just to explore what you got to offer. Very similar in a physical environment when you have a store, people just randomly walk into your store, right? And they are just exploring what you offer, what are the product catalogs you have. They may or may not have an intention to buy, but these are called prospective leads. These are not your customers. The whole business is to convert those prospective leads into paying customers. So when we talk about digital customer acquisition, we can actually have AI powered bots, and we'll go into details of bots in the next chapter. But I want to set this expectation here that bots can actually handle leads and enable better conversion from a lead to a paying customer. So that's how bots can help in customer acquisition. Many of you might have even experienced when you go to certain travel related transaction websites, they've got a bot which pops up from the right hand side of the window saying, "Hi, my name is Karthik, how can I help you?" Now some of those bots are AI enabled, but some of those bots are actually live chat which a person at the other end is actually talking to. But here we are talking about AI enabled bots, not live chat with a human being. So if we move on to business operations, which is the next part of the business, you can actually do smart inventory ordering using AI. So AI can actually understand your supply chain, understand your reordering levels, and can actually autonomously create a reorder request and on the fly manage inventory for you without anybody managing it. In fact, in certain industries, inventory management is a big task. In most manufacturing industries, heavy industries, oil and gas, inventory handling, especially in cases where inventory has got a shelf life, it is very important to constantly replenishing both the supply inventory as well as your end product inventory. You can also look at AI based asset management. So if you got RFID enabled tags which are on your every fixed asset, like if you talk about our campus, we've got computer, digital devices, we've got chairs, furnitures, all of these are assets. You can actually do smart asset management using RFID tags and AI technology to keep a track of your assets and see how they are looking on your balance sheet. You can also do NLP based intelligent reporting on your operations. NLP is natural language processing. We'll talk about NLP in further detail in the next chapter when we go on. But you can actually use NLP to have a conversation with your ERP. So currently what happens in most ERPs, you would have seen, you log in and there are different drop down menus and you go through it, apply filters, date range, and then you get certain reports. But imagine if you can talk to your MIS or ERP. What if I could just have a conversation with my ERP system and say, how was the sales for my business last month? And it understood what I meant and gave me specific reports. Or I could talk about a certain employee. Let's take my name, Karthik, and I say, how's Karthik's territory doing in this financial year? So it understands my conversation, parses it, analyzes it, and gives me specific data which I want without me even having to type. I can just speak into my phone and saying, give me this report or tell me what are the projections for the next month. And it analyzes everything and presents it to me in a easy to read and consume format using data visualization tools. So that's the level of on the power of AI which we can look at when we talk about a basic mundane task like reporting. Next, when we talk about customer support, this is very critical. Customer support in most industries, it is very labor intensive. So you got these call centers which handle inbound calls. There are also outbound service call requests which are done from these call centers. You need to run these call centers 24/7 because your customers might be in different time zones, or they might have, if you talk about travel for example, they might have a flight at 2 in the morning and they need to immediately get some information around if the flight is delayed or at what gate the flight is coming at. You need to have a 24/7 customer interface these days. That's a huge cost, right? If you need to have a 3 shift based call center running 24 hours a day, it's a huge cost. Then you need to have multilingual support because not all your customers would understand English or Hindi. They might be in different states or in different countries. How do you provide them multilingual support 24/7? That's a huge cost we are talking about. And the other issue is, how do you know if your customer care agent has actually solved the problem? Because in most of these companies, they do only 5% to 10% quality audit, where they will see through and listen through the calls, but that's a random check. What if 95% of your customers are getting substandard service How do you handle that? You can't put an army of people to actually listen to each call and analyze it. But what if AI can help you there? AI can actually listen to all these conversations, do sentiment analysis, understand if the customer was happy or not. You can actually run your entire performance appraisal management system using AI, because AI actually knows how you handled your customer, what was the customer's pain point, did the customer end the call happy or not so happy. So this entire process can be automated beautifully using AI. And not to mention the cost benefits, because you wouldn't need a huge army of people to run your call center. Everything is done through AI. You might have few people, that too like Sophia maybe, who are actually handling your customers when they walk in. Otherwise everything could be handled using artificial intelligence. Even if you look at certain support processes like order to cash, procure to pay, record to report, these are all administrative related processes in supply chain, finance and marketing. All these could be enabled and transformed using AI, resulting in substantial cost savings. Any transaction in a business which you can think of can be done easier, faster and cheaper using AI. So on this slide, I actually want you to take a note and think in whatever business or whatever job you are interested in. You might be interested in finance, or you might be interested in working in an FMCG company. Think about that organization, and when you do your summer internship, try to study their processes and try to understand how AI can be implemented in their processes, and take up one department and work with your team to come up with innovative solutions of using AI to solve problems in that department. What I want you to understand at this stage is, while all these sounds very interesting, motivating and encouraging, AI has to go through certain stages. So some of the innovative solutions we talked about in the last slide, they may not be 100% feasible and possible on day one. It has to go through a journey. So if we look at the entire journey of AI from 100% manual, which was in first or second industrial revolution, to now, the journey is, we started with descriptive analytics, which basically talks about what happened. So you're basically reporting that a certain event happened and you're just talking about it. The next is when you're talking about diagnostic analytics, where we actually go into a further more detail, do a root cause analysis and talk about why did it actually happen. I want you to at this stage study a bit more detail about Ishikawa diagram, fishbone analysis and Six Sigma. There you will understand certain tools of doing root cause analysis of a certain problem. The third level is where you do predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is when you're talking about how can I actually prevent this problem for reoccurring based on the root cause. Prescriptive analytics is when you can actually give a recommendation that how should the process be redesigned or restructured to actually prevent this problem for reoccurring. So that's the prescriptive stage. The stage where the holy trail is, where we're talking about AI, is cognitive analytics, where we can actually cause something to happen. And when we know a certain thing is about to happen, we can on the go take a call. And mind you, this is not linear. This is not if these situations happen then reply. That's basic level of analytics. This is the same problem might occur but in a different context or in a different environment, and our solution will change. Just like human beings, right? If I ask you a certain question, your answer would be something. But if the same question is asked by, let's say, your mother, your answer would be different, because you know the context, that what's the level of difference of skills and knowledge between your mother and myself, and what's the context and the relationship. Human beings are able to adapt their response to a certain situation based on these contours and parameters. Similarly, when we talk about AI, we are looking at a machine or an algorithm which is able to tailor-made its response to a same problem given the change in context and contours. It is very important to also understand that how AI evolves with the complexity of the problem. So, in this graph on the x-axis we are talking about structured data, unstructured data and situative knowledge representation. Mind you, most of the data which has been used over the years in systems has all been structured data in a structured format, in a structured template, and we all used to do analysis on that structured data. But when we talk about AI, we are moving towards from the structured data to even unstructured data, which could be media files, audio recordings, videos, voice notes. So, these are all unstructured data. Then we also have situative knowledge representation. We might not have any data, it's just a situation, and how we handle that situation goes into our knowledge base of our responses. So, that is the level of complexity of the input to a AI system. When we talk about y-axis, the method of implementing AI also changes based on the input complexity. So, we start with rule based methods. So, that was the earliest AI based system. It was called expert systems, where you define if then. So, for any situation you would have rules, and that is how most of the programming we have learned till now works, that you have a set of rule engine and based on that you have responses. But from that we move to supervised and unsupervised learning. We will go a bit more detail in the next chapter in terms of what is the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning, but the fundamental idea is that without somebody explicitly programming or feeding in the rules, the algorithm has to learn on its own and evolve. The third is reinforcement learning and deep learning. You remember in the last chapter we talked about deep learning. You want to revise it? Deep learning is actually a subset of artificial intelligence in which we are looking at complex ANN, neural network, artificial neural networks, in which the algorithm is able to learn on its own without any external input and is able to create patterns on its own without any training data set available. And fourth is the evolved methods, which are still on the going basis getting evolved. So, if you look at this graph, we started from expert systems, which I talked about. Now we are moving towards classical data science, which is called diagnostic and predictive AI, where we are able to predict why a certain thing is happening and how we can prevent it from happening. Then this is the stage where we are actually at, which is called human inspired AI. We are talking about matching human intelligence. We are talking about robots like Sophia, which are humanoids, and actually trying to mirror the human level of intelligence and experience. The fourth is really exciting to me. Fourth is humanized and autonomous AI. That is where AI in its true sense would be so powerful that without any human being it is able to autonomously carry out a task and match the same level of intelligence as a human being without any supervision. And this is the stage where we would actually have humans working or machines working side by side with humans, and there will be no difference. You will not be able to say that this is a human working with a machine. It will be like co-workers working, because as human beings we are also part machines, right? We use spectacles, we use pacemaker in our heart, we got loads of devices working under us, and now we are talking about nano robots which could go inside your body, analyze you, do diagnostics for you. So, there will be a thin line of difference in 10-20 years, that whether you are 70% human, 30% machine, or vice versa. Sounds scary, but it's going to be very exciting. When we talk about the different components of AI, which I talked about at the start of this chapter, you got something called analytic AI, which is sentiment analysis, doing risk assessments, doing predictive analytics on top of the data. You got functional AI, which are robots like Sophia, functional robots, IoT systems. You got interactive AI, which are chatbots, smart digital assistants, or general bots which you could have a conversation with. You got text AI, which is text recognition, speech to text conversion. Remember that example at the start of this chapter we had, where we understood and analyzed that how a certain command is understood and executed by a smart device. Fourth is very important. It's called visual AI, which basically talks about computer vision. So computer vision is a big thing in AI, and we'll go into a bit more detail in the next chapter. Any example of AI which you see around you, you use Face ID on your phone, which unlocks your phone based on your photo. You got CCTV enabled smart vision cameras, they use computer vision. Self-driving cars, that entire model is based on smart computer vision, where the computer is able to analyze the imagery around it, do analytics on video and images, and actually on the runtime do edge computing to solve that problem. So computer vision is an extremely important component of artificial intelligence. So if we look at sort of in a summarized way the underlying model of how AI works based on the last 3 slides we studied. So you've got machine learning, which basically talks about how the machine learns from the data and trains the algorithm. You got natural language processing, which talks about how the machine understands and interprets a command into a language which you and me understand. You got speech systems, which basically understand voice commands and converts it into text and gives a feed to NLP. You got expert systems, which are rule based engines, which we talked about. You got planning, scheduling, optimization, and vision enabled computer vision, which we talked about. So these are the underlying components. And if you go further down, you've got underlying tools and frameworks which you can study on your own, which talks about clustering mechanisms, classifications, ANNs, and these are the underlying tools which enable these components of AI to actually deliver the end objective of AI. Now the issue is, how do you really define AI? Is it just the autonomous system? Is it a system which talks and speaks like a human being? Is it a system which understands and interprets commands like a human system? Or is it a combination of all of these? So these are some of the questions to which I want you to come up with answers based on what you have heard till now. Is AI a program that behaves externally like a human being? Are these programs similar to human beings in terms of processing as well, or just the look and feel? Are these computational systems intelligent just like humans, or they are artificially intelligent like humans? Fourth and the most important point, can they have a rational behavior? And this, as a hint I am giving you, this ties into the triangle we had in we talked about machine consciousness, where machines can have their own value systems, they can have their own consciousness. So think about these questions in subsequent chapters. At the end of this chapter, I want to share a very important concept which will set the stage for the coming chapters in terms of how do you really define when a system is AI. Because you will hear a lot of noise where people will claim that their product or their technology is AI enabled. Lot of funding is being given on just products which carry a name AI powered or AI inspired. How do you differentiate between a system which is true AI and not really AI? I'll give you a simple test. Remember I told you in chapter 1 that in 1950s a scientist called Alan Turing came up with a test. That test is called Turing test. That test is used for machines to understand if they are as intelligent as human beings or not. Because let's say, assume human beings are the most intelligent species in the world. That's the assumption. To be called intelligent and a true AI, a machine should be able to produce responses that are indistinguishable from a human being. That's the cutoff to understand if a system is true AI or not. If there is somebody who's interacting with, let's say, Sophia, without seeing who is Sophia, on a phone call, let's say, and if they're not able to distinguish whether it's a human being or a machine, that means that that machine has passed Turing test. You know recently who passed Turing test? Google Assistant, which all of us use on our phones. Let's see a small video in which Google CEO is talking about how Turing test was passed by Google Assistant. This is a very interesting video.
The progress with the assistant. As I said earlier, our vision for our assistant is to help you get things done. It turns out a big part of getting things done is making a phone call. You may want to get an oil change schedule, maybe call a plumber in the middle of the week, or even schedule a haircut appointment. You know, we are working hard to help users through those moments. We want to connect users to businesses in a good way. Businesses actually rely a lot on this, but even in the US, 60% of small businesses don't have an online booking system set up. We think AI can help with this problem. So let's go back to this example. Let's say you want to ask Google to make you a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Did you see how amazing is this? That you are actually able to use Google Assistant and AI to do things get done for you. This is truly amazing, and this is not a in the lab technology. It's out there and you can start using it. It was launched last year at the Google conference. This is the level of AI maturity which we have already reached. So to summarize in this chapter, I want to talk about 3 things. One is, we learned that what are the underlying components of AI, vision AI, NLP, data. Then we talked about what it really means to have a intelligent AI system. It's got underlying stages of maturity. We had a look at those stages. We looked at that graph in which we talked about how the input complexity drives sophistication in AI technologies. Then lastly, we talked about how do we really know that a system is truly intelligent or AI enabled or not, which is through Turing test. Not to mention, we also talked about the framework of how AI can be implemented in any organization. So I want you to now take notes and come up with innovative solutions as to how AI can be implemented in your place of work or in a summer project which you want to undertake. Thank you so much.